Hi, I'm Emi Kimbrough. I'm an instructor with the Jacksonville Art League, and today I'll be demonstrating how to draw portraiture using Copic markers. I'll be doing a self-portrait today, and I'll be using toned paper. Alright, so the first step to any drawing is to do the sketch, and that is in pencil. When you're doing your sketch, you want to first look at your model, or in this case, your photo reference, and try to determine what you're going to do for your composition, like where you're going to put large elements such as the head and shoulders, and how you're going to break down the different shapes of the face. So usually what I do is I start out fairly large and vague, but then I do go pretty quickly into the features after that. A lot of artists will try to lay down general information for the entire page before they do any detail, and that is a good way to go about it, but I have always struggled to get that to work very well in my own drawings, so I do things a little bit differently. When you're doing the hair in a portrait, you want to try to make it too big instead of too small, because that will be much less noticeable as a difference from the model's appearance than if you made it too small, because if you make it too small, it may look like their head is too small, and that is a much bigger problem than their hair looking a little big. And you can always rework any element from your sketch later on in the drawing. You don't have to stick to it, so you've got freedom to make mistakes at this point. Now that I've laid out the general location of the head and shoulders, I'm going to start working on one of the eyes. And when I do eyes, I sometimes like to start with the eyebrows because they're a good anchoring element to like the bone structure of the face, and so having the eyebrow in there first helps determine where the shadows will go and where the eye itself will go in relation to those shadows. It can sometimes be difficult to tell where the pupil is when your model has very dark eyes. In this particular reference, it's illuminated enough that you can tell, but even if you can't see the pupils, you want to add them into your drawing anyway. You want to go back and check your reference often to make sure that you're getting everything in the right location. And remember, this is your sketch, so if you do get something wrong, you can always erase it. When you're drawing a model with glasses, you want to treat the glasses as though they're a part of the face, and not try to draw the face without including the glasses, because they are going to be in your finished piece, and you want to be sure that they're in the right sort of location and that they fit on the face properly. And this can be a challenge, but you just rework it until you figure it out how you want it. And keep checking your reference or the live model the whole time. If you're having trouble with one feature, it can help a lot to just move on and do a different feature, and then maybe you'll be able to use that feature's relationship to the one you are having trouble with to work it out. When you're looking at a portrait, you always want to make sure that you capture the highlights. I tend to include these in my sketch. Here, when I modeled for the portraiture class at the Art League, I wore some very shiny makeup so that the highlights would be clearer for everyone to work with. But even if your model is not wearing very shiny makeup, you can still find the highlights in their face, and it is important to find those. I like to map out all my little shadow shapes in my sketch. However, these are subject to change in the final drawing. Do not be afraid to draw the dark areas underneath the model's eyes. Everybody does have those, and it adds a lot of drama to a drawing. Sketch is a negotiative process, and you always want to leave it open to change until it's completely done. And even then, you can still go back and make changes when you're inking and putting in the marker. You just want to have all your real dramatic changes done by then. everything on the face is a three-dimensional object and you want to treat it as such, you don't have just one three-dimensional object with like lips drawn onto it. The lips are in themselves a three-dimensional object, and the same goes for the eyes and all the other features. In this particular reference, the ear is partially obscured by the hair, but you still want to render details in what you can see of the ear. The ear is a very important part of any portrait that often gets somewhat overlooked. It's got a lot of different planes and dimension to it, and you want to be sure to capture that when you're drawing a portrait. People often won't really notice a good ear in a portrait, but they'll definitely notice an ear that looks super off. And so it's important even though it's not generally a focal point. And get all the detail in the glasses too. They've got their own light and shadow areas, and they cast a shadow on the face. Alright, when you're doing the clothing, you do want to pay attention to detail there too. This particular outfit has a lot of sequins, and so the edge of the strap here is going to be uneven since it's made of sequins. And there are areas where the sequins are reversible, so they're a different color. And you don't have to render every single individual sequin unless you want to, because that isn't the focal point of the drawing and it would take a very long time. But you do want to get the general texture, and a lot of this you can do later on with the markers, but you want to lay down the basics with your sketch. Especially you want to get locations where there's highlights and dark shadows. once you mostly have your sketch laid down, you want to look it over and check to be sure there's nothing that needs attention and editing before you move on to inking. I always like to include little details like freckles or more visible acne. A lot of artists will remove anything that they think could be unflattering, but personally I think that it adds a lot of character to the piece and that it's good to find beauty in that kind of thing. Alright, I'm pretty happy with my sketch here, so it's ready to add the ink and color to it soon. Just gonna add a little finishing touch right here where the shadow comes from the nose. Yeah, so I'll move on to inking in a minute.